What's up, guys? Welcome to the Win Daily Week 6 DFS main slate preview. Your host here, Andrew Erickson. You can find me on Twitter at @AndrewErickson_. And yeah, I am back again to go over the slate for Win Daily and DFS DraftKings. So I hope you guys are tuning in. Hope you guys have been winning some money because we're going to get to the download here and make sure that all you guys come away with some winnings this week. So let's dive right in with our first game, Bengals at Ravens. So again, this game looks like a great bounce back spot for Lamar Jackson. He's $6,900 on DraftKings. The Bengals are one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So I really think that Lamar Jackson bounces back in this game. You factor in his rushing ability. He's a great player in your roster for your cash lineups. I think he's a lock in those lineups for sure. I would downgrade him a little bit if Marquise Brown misses, but still, that could just lead to more of him running the ball, so more fantasy points for your team. I really also like Mark Ingram in GPP formats. The Bengals have allowed 93 rushing yards last week to the Cardinals. This was specifically to Kyler Murray, So Lamar Jackson, again, you definitely want to play him, but the Bengals defense has been atrocious against the run. Mark Ingram at $6,600 could definitely explode in this matchup, and he gets often overlooked because he doesn't catch as many passes. That's why I like him more in GPPs as opposed to in cash games. Again, no team has an implied total higher than the Ravens at 29.75 points, and at least every running back that's played the Bengals this year with at least 10 carries has scored at least 14 fantasy points. Moving on to our next game, Texans at Chiefs. This is a game that a lot of people are going to be attacking, but I think that it's a game where you actually may want to fade some of those top-end receivers. You got guys like DeAndre Hopkins, and I just think that, teams struggle when they play on the road in Kansas City. It's a tough place to play, and everyone's kind of hyped up on the passing attack for the Texans, and especially, but you have, Patrick Mahomes is banged up. He has an ankle injury. And we saw the best script ever for Deshaun Watson last week. He was not sacked for the second time in his career. Both games he's never been sacked, he's thrown 5 touchdowns. So, I think there's a chance that he may get sacked in this game. He may see more pressure. Offensive lines don't play well when they travel on the road. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I think actually going to the running backs in this matchup for both teams is actually a good option to pivot off the passing game. So you have Carlos Hyde for the running back for the Texans. Chiefs are allowing 5.3 yards per carry, which is second highest in the NFL. When the Chiefs are at home, teams are averaging 38.5 rushing attempts per game. So Carlos Hyde could be the great pivot play off of these high-end receivers. I would say to get off of these high-end receivers as well, you look to a guy like Travis Kelce on the Chiefs. He's not scored a touchdown since week 1. He's bound to explode, and especially if Tyreek Hill comes back, I think he's an option. Byron Pringle as well as a guy in cash games, 3,500 if Watkins misses, along with Tyreek Hill as well. Saints at the Jaguars. So you have in this game, Minshew Mania, baby. That's what it's all about. Gardner Minshew is a really cheap quarterback, and I think that you can stack him with both D.D. Westbrook and with your guy, DJ Chark. I really actually like D.D. Westbrook in this matchup. P.J. Williams has been terrible in the slot. Essentially what we're seeing from here is that, specifically guys like Chris Godwin, Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp all went over 100 yards when they played against the Saints, and that's because of P.J. Williams. So I think D.D. Westbrook at 5,100 is a great play, and DJ Chark, I think people may be afraid of him because of the Marshawn Lattimore matchup, but I think that DJ Chark has shown, he runs 4.34. That's different from Mike Evans, who's a much slower receiver. Chark has kind of possessed a different skill set, and Marshawn Lattimore, despite his great 2 games the last 2 weeks, has actually given up a lot of yardage to receivers this season. So I don't think that you should be fading him. And for the running backs, Kamara, I think he's a perfect GPP play. He's banged up. If he plays, I think that he's a perfect guy to spot in here. No team has allowed a higher yards per attempt on the ground, 5.5, than the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. And the Jaguars have also allowed the second most red zone targets to the running back position and the 6th most fantasy points overall to the running back position. Eagles at Vikings. We saw a bounce back effort from the Vikings passing attack, and I think you go back to it. I just think instead of Thielen, you go with Diggs. He's cheaper, and I think that we'll just kind of see. They kind of have been going back and forth with matchups. So Kirk Cousins is a cheap quarterback to get in GPPs. You stack him with Diggs, and I think you stack him with Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook can play in cash and GPPs because one of the biggest things the Eagles are not good at is stopping screen passes. And the Vikings have been one of the best operating screen passes on offense. Check out the article on the website, but you will find that I kind of dive a little bit deeper into it. But yes, Dalvin Cook is definitely in play in cash because I think he'll be involved in the passing game or in the running game. The Vikings are favored, so if they win, I think that they're going to run the rock with Dalvin Cook. So continue to play Dalvin Cook in this matchup. Seahawks at the Browns. So with the Browns, I think that Odell Beckham Jr. is actually going to bounce back in this game. I think that this is a game, he's a matchup where he can definitely expose the corner. The Seahawks do not possess, great cornerbacks, and this is what we're looking for. We're looking for those elite wide receivers that have elite ceilings that are under 7K. Odell Beckham Jr. is at 6,800 this week. You can put him into a lot of lineups. You're not paying up, sacrificing a lot to get him in, which is why I think Odell Beckham Jr. is a must play in GPPs this week. Repeat, must play in GPPs this week. Get him on your roster. Baker Mayfield should have more time to throw the ball. This defensive line is not nearly as good as the 49ers on the Seahawks. And both Cooper Kupp and John Ross both went over 100 receiving yards and had scored touchdowns against the Seahawks secondary. They can be burned. They can give up big plays. Hell, they gave up big game to John Ross, okay? If John Ross and Andy Dalton can do it with that offensive line, I think that Baker Mayfield can get it done with Odell Beckham Jr. on the outside. Redskins at the Dolphins. Tank Bowl, anybody? Yeah, so this is an interesting game, I think. But from a perspective, there are plays here. I think Adrian Peterson and Preston Williams are both guys who can play in GPPs. The Redskins are going to establish the run, and Preston Williams is the best receiver on the Dolphins against a Redskins secondary that has absolutely been trashed this season. I do think that the Redskins defense is also in play. I do not like Miami's as much because, A, they're Miami and they're terrible, but Case Keenum has actually been able to push the ball down the field pretty well this year. So I don't necessarily like the fact of, I'm going to stream Miami at 2,700. I would rather play the Jets, honestly, at 1,500 because of how cheap those guys are. Again, the Dolphins rank actually last in the league in pass blocking on the season, and the Redskins were able to sack Tom Brady 5 times last week. Falcons at Cardinals. So I'm actually kind of fading the top-end receivers here. Again, what I've seen from GPPs and cash games basically in my studies is that when you pay up for these high-end wide receivers, they don't necessarily, benefit. It's not worth the price. You look at the Falcons, the Cardinals bleed fantasy points to everybody, but especially the tight end position. So I would rather just play Austin Hooper and fade a guy like Julio, whose price is still super high. I mean, you're chasing that 200 plus receiving yard game and 3 touchdowns, but the Falcons can beat the Cardinals in so many different ways. Putting all your money into Julio Jones doesn't really make sense. Honestly, Mohamed Sanu could just any of those guys could have a samely equally game, but you're putting more of your chips into Julio because maybe his ceiling is the highest, but you're paying up for it. I'm not so sure you need to with so many pay down spots. I'm in better value plays this week, especially at the receiver position. So I'm firing up Austin Hooper, and I really like Kyler Murray as the quarterback in cash games. 49ers at the Rams. So we have an injury update here. So Todd Gurley is probably not going to be playing in this game, which means Malcolm Brown is a locked and loaded cash play at the running back position. I would not play him in GPPs because I just think his ownership is going to be too high, and I don't know how high his ceiling is against a tough 49ers defense, but I did some research, and I looked at Malcolm Brown with the Rams, and his one start in Week 17 in 2017, he actually did get involved in the passing game. He had 5 targets and 4 receptions, only for 7 yards, but that was what I was really concerned about was, can he be involved in the passing game, what I want to do and have in my cash running back plays. And he did. He showed that. Obviously, Darrell Henderson is kind of involved. He has barely played this year, so we don't know his role, but I do think that Malcolm Brown is going to receive at least 15 to 20 touches, and I think that he will see enough in the passing game, or at least not totally come off the field if the Rams fall behind in this matchup. So I think Malcolm Brown at his price, he's at right at $4,400. I think that he's a locked and loaded cash play in this lineup. And then finally, kind of wrapping up with these last 2 games, Cowboys at Jets. You have the Jets defense who's at 1,500 and Le'Veon Bell who's at 6,400. Both super value plays. I mean, the Jets 1,500, their DVOA is 10th overall and they're at home. Their defense isn't even that bad. So I think the Jets defense is super in play, and Le'Veon Bell for getting all the touches. I think that he can be playing both cash and in GPPs. For the Cowboys, Michael Gallup is the play here, I think. He's at 5,600, and I really like him against this really poor Jets defense. The Jets pass defense, excuse me. So I really like Michael Gallup in this matchup. I think that he can do a lot in this game. For our last game, Titans at Broncos. It's a pretty boring game. It has the lowest under-over total of the slate, right around 40 points. And I think that the sleeper in this game is rookie wide receiver from Mississippi, A.J. Brown, $4,200. Last week he had a touchdown that was actually negated by a penalty from Marcus Mariota. He played 64.5% of the snaps in Week 5, which was the highest of the season. He outsnapped Humphreys and Tajay Sharp for the first time all year. And I like the matchup because Chris Harris of the Broncos is going to be all over Corey Davis, which means it's going to be eaten season for A.J. Brown. I think that he can make plays after the catch. Just a matter of, hey, Mariota, just get him the ball. I think he's going to see targets in this game, and he's shown run big play ability so far this year. And he's 4,200, so not super, super expensive. And I think he's going to be really low owned. One of the biggest attributes of future success is a PFF stat called yards per route run. Brown ranks 8th in the NFL in yards per route run this season of any player that has at least 19 targets at 2.38. You look at the names that are in that, it's all of the best receivers in the NFL. So I think that we're just waiting for an A.J. Brown breakout, and I think that this is the game. We've already seen flashes, so it's not really too much of a surprise to play him or have faith in A.J. Brown. For the Broncos, I do like Noah Fant kind of going back there. The Titans have allowed the 5th most points to the position. That's kind of where their weakness is. So if you really want to punt at tight end, go lower owned. You don't want to pay up for one of the better tight ends, which I think is more of the strategy this week with some of the higher priced tight ends. I think that Noah Fant at 2,900, who is ranked 10th in the NFL in routes run for the tight end position, I think that he is a great value this week as well. So there, you guys have it. The full article is up on windailysports.com. You can find it in my profile, NFL Week 6 DFS main slate preview. Good luck this week, guys.